Hello everyone and welcome to the Centre for Legal Innovations Legalpreneurs Lab Innovation Incubator Information Session. We are delighted to have you here, as I am delighted to have all of the coaches, which you'll have an opportunity to meet a little bit later in this presentation, and I'll introduce you to them then. So let me kick off at the beginning, I guess, in terms of this session, and to provide you with a little bit of an agenda for us to start. And we'll move through these relatively quickly because I want to spend a lot of time in this session for you to be able to not just meet the coaches, but also to understand a little bit about the key areas that we are seeking your submission, your applications and your projects in. So first, a quick overview of where it all started. The Centre for Legal Innovation conducted a series of mini sprints on the topic, can we fix the law firm business model, last year. We did those throughout Australia, New Zealand, and in Asia. And what jumped out from those sprints was a whole bunch of different areas in law firms where people wanted to focus a little bit more, wanted to advance changes and innovations. And we're really looking for help to be able to do that over a sustained period of time. The sprints were designed by Melissa Lyon. As many of you know, Melissa works at Hive Legal and did this as part of her CLI Distinguished Fellowship. So we're grateful for Melissa in designing a process that ultimately led us to where we are today. Because, as I said, the areas that came out of the mini sprints were complex, they had lots of bits and pieces to them and they required time and commitment to solve them. We wanted to be able to find a solution where we could support firms to be able to do that. So the idea basically turned into the incubators, and it's where we find ourselves today. The purpose of these incubators very simply are to provide that opportunity, to provide the opportunity for applicants through their projects to be able to conceive, develop and launch an innovation project. We have confined those to 4 key areas, and I'll point to those in just a second. And we wanted folks to be able to advance their innovation with the online support of specialist coaches. We're looking at these projects probably taking somewhere between 6 to 12 months, certainly not more than 12 months. But we also recognise that some of the projects may take a little less time, but we would imagine realistically not less than 6 months. So what are the key areas for these projects that we're talking about? There are 4 of them. Leading and managing the new multidisciplinary workforce. And as I say, we'll come back and talk about those a little bit more in just a second. Creating a collaborative culture, redefining value and championing change. So if you are looking to submit projects for the incubator, those projects will need to fall into one of those 4 areas. So let's talk a little bit about cost, and I wanted to deal with this right up front. These incubators and your participation in them attracts no application fee. There is no ongoing cost. There is nothing payable to the Centre for Legal Innovation or the lab or any of the coaches. And I want to pause for a moment and say that we have only been able to do this through the generous donation of time for the coaches that you see here and that you will meet shortly. I do want to acknowledge them and how much we appreciate that contribution from them. So as far as you're concerned, no cost whatever associated with this lab. All right, let's talk a little bit about you. The applications that we're seeking are from law firms, legal departments, which may be in companies, organisations or government, community legal centres or alternative legal service providers. Now, I just want to emphasise here that the participants are organisations and not individuals. So your project is about doing something in your organisation as opposed to doing something for you personally. We're asking for participation from Australia and New Zealand, and there will be a maximum initial cohort of 24. So in the 4 key areas, we're looking for 6 projects in each of those areas maximum. So it may be that this initial cohort is maxed out at 24, or it may be that it's something less. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. What is the application process? Relatively straightforward, and I've noted for you here on these slides the ones that you particularly need to focus on because they have deadlines attached to them. So first and foremost, just want to mention that all communications on this project or incubator should be to the email address noted there, lplab@collaw.edu.au. We won't be looking for and we won't be responding to emails that go to a different address. So please make sure that if you're applying that you've set your spam filter to make sure that it's going to receive emails from that address, and of course that you email to it. First major deadline, we have an online application process, and that will close at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the 18th of May. There won't be any extensions, so that's a hard deadline and a hard time that we do ask you to focus on. Your applications will then be reviewed by judges. Those judges will be me. It will be the coaches that you're about to meet in the particular key area, and it will be another person who is a practitioner or working in a professional services firm with a keen interest, obviously, in innovation. We will advise the project leaders, and I'll come back to that in just in a second. We will provide the project leaders of the successful applicants by email that their project has been successful and it has been accepted no later than 5 o'clock on the 27th of May. Please note, and this is the other really important deadline for the folks who will be the project leaders of those successful applicants, we do need you to confirm your acceptance of the place. And again, you'll see there's a deadline there at 5 o'clock on the 29th of May. So a very short period of time in which to do that. If we haven't heard from folks by that time, we will have created a waiting list. So immediately that time and date comes along. If we haven't heard from you, we will assume that you don't wish to take up your place, and we will move on to obviously the first person on the waiting list in that key area and so forth. So important deadlines here, just underscoring those in terms of time and date. What info are we going to be looking from you for the application form? Again, it's an online form. We want to know where you're located. It's a very easy checkbox to note that. We will want to know the name of your project manager or leader. We also have asked if that project manager will consent to their mobile phone number being used in a WhatsApp group so that we can create another means for you to communicate quite quickly as a group. We do ask you to choose the project area that you are submitting your application in, and then what I would call brief details about your project. So we need a title, we need goals, we need to know what you want to achieve, we need to know how long you think it will take, we need you to give us a brief description, and we also want you to focus on how you see that will advance innovation in your firm or your organisation. And we'll also ask you to name team members that will be working with you on this project. So I want to pause just there for a second and underscore a couple of things about that. Those details, in order to provide them, will obviously pushing you to consider this project and to consider some details with respect to the project. We think it's important that you have gone that far in terms of the application process, both in terms of your own process of thinking this through, but also for your coaches to start taking on board that information that you've provided to be able to hit the ground running in terms of being able to support your projects. So do take a little time in order to think those details through. We do, of course, understand that as your project advances, we would expect that some of those things might change, your goals, your deliverables, or whatever the case may be. But starting with something in mind, we think a plan, if you like, in mind, is an important starting point. If you would like to submit applications in more than one key area, we would ask, please, that you complete a separate application form. If you are also submitting applications from more than one location, that you also submit a separate application form. As you folks will know, this is a project of the Legalpreneurs Lab, and as such, we will give preference to applicants who have members in the Legalpreneurs Lab. It doesn't preclude anyone else, but we do kind of want to bring that to your attention. So a couple of really important things with the application process. You will have seen reference to, and after this session, we will send out to all of you again, where you can access the frequently asked questions with respect to the Incubator program. We strongly recommend that you read the FAQs in detail before you submit your application form. And in fact, we're going to get you to ask in the online application form to actually confirm that you've read and agree to the information that's provided there. We will not accept application forms in any other means other than the online form that we have created. If you have any issues with that, or accessing it, of course, please don't hesitate to contact us. And again, we're just underscoring that application form submission deadline for you there. Okay, the big one as you're looking at this, I'm sure, is what resources are going to be available to you and what resources do you need to provide. So let me first start with CLI. We're going to be here to basically keep the wheels rolling on all of this. We want to keep you connected to your group. We want to keep you connected to the coach, your coach or coaches, and we also want to keep you connected to the incubator more broadly. Here's what we will not be doing. This is your project, obviously supported and assisted by CLI and the coaches. So we won't be providing secretarial support or making appointments or doing research for you or typing up your project plan. So as you think about these projects, this really becomes a project by you for you. So you will be doing the admin and management related to your project for yourself. You'll need to make sure that you've got resources, as in you, people working on the team, the project leaders, your firm, your legal department, your organisation. You're going to have to make sure that you've got those resources to be able to move the project forward. So again, just want to pause and underscore that because it's an important one. More particularly, what are we talking about? As I said, we're focusing on projects that are suggested by you, for you, and tailored to your means and are highly practical. We think or expect that you'll want to become part of this incubator because it's something that you really want to move along to change or innovate in your firm or your legal department. We also want to underscore that the sort of things that we're looking at, to go back to what I said at the beginning, will take time. They're going to take effort. They're going to take resources. But you ultimately will be entering this program because you expect that it's also going to advance something for the benefit of your clients, your staff, and for your firm or organisation. So here's what I would say to you, and I've got this noted on the slide. The places are limited. When we select you, we may well be selecting you and not selecting other people. So you're taking one of the few spots, if you like, that are available. So we want to make sure that when you push the submit button on your application form, that you're not just in the incubator, but you're all in. You're going to have the time, resources, and effort to be able to devote to this. So a little bit more on resources. As I mentioned, you'll need to nominate a project leader. You'll probably have a project team to be able to make this work and advance it in your organisation. You'll have to provide admin to keep the project moving along. You'll also have to provide, and I've just used a very broad term there in terms of secretarial support, but by that I mean making the plans, the appointments, basically making everything happen on time and delivering the sorts of things that you want the project to. Your project leader will need to attend monthly coaching meetings. They will be led by the coaches you're just about to meet. and it will be a coaching circle. So you will be contributing not only what's happening on your project, but your thoughts, advice, and support of the other folks who are working in that same key area as you on their individual projects. We expect that we'll kick off the projects in June. So again, it gives you kind of a time frame in which to start organising yourself to be able to kick this project off internally. We will ultimately ask you also to be part of paying it forward. So everyone is donating time to basically support moving your projects forward. At the end of the day, from each of the key areas, we'll ask you to share your project or perhaps a consolidation of the high-level learnings with the broader legal community. It also effectively sets up the opportunity for the next cohort of people that will come into the incubator to understand what you have done and what they can do and achieve through the incubator as well. So now we're at the really good part. You don't have to talk to me anymore or hear from me more particularly, but really to get to meet your coaches. Again, I just want to say to you, what an amazing group of people have been assembled here. As your coaches. You see all of them there with their first names attached to them, and now you're about to meet them in detail. I wanted to give you a headline of what the specialist coaches will do. As I've already said, they will facilitate a virtual coaching circle every month for you for a maximum of 12 months, obviously, in terms of the longest projects. They're there to help you get your projects up and running, to check in to see how you're going, to share in your successes and failures. And I really want to underscore that, and I'm sure they will as well, because the reality is that you learn often as much from your failures as you do from your successes. So to help you entrench what's worked and to help you move through any of your challenges, they're there to listen, get you unstuck, help you get focused on the lessons learned, and most particularly to help you move through any roadblocks. The benefit of a coaching circle is that you not only get to share in the expertise of these coaches, which is exceptional, but to share in the experience of all of the other folks who will be in that coaching circle with you, which I hope will be a phenomenal experience for all of you. Again, here are the 4 key areas that we will be asking for projects from, and we're going to address one of those through the coaches in turn, kind of starting first with the new Briggs and Jan Christie. So if I may hand over to you folks and to talk a little bit about the projects and leading and managing the new multidisciplinary workforce. And Anu, I guess if we can hear from you and your background first.
Sure. Thank you so much, Terri. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. So I just thought I'd touch on my journey, really, starting with, where did I come from and where am I now? So my journey was I started, like many of us, in private practice in a large firm in London and worked for a number of years. Sorry, that's my perfume dropping off the side. It's got some legs of its own. And then I moved into a couple of in-house roles. So I moved from private practice to in-house, and then I transitioned and moved to the other side of the world for fun to try something different, and landed in the world of HR, back in law firms, but doing a very different role. Absolutely loved the transition. I had always enjoyed working as part of very large transactional teams as a lawyer, and so I really thrived on the opportunity to work in the sort of people development space. I did that for a number of years before I then transitioned into my current role, which is the head of capability development and change. Throughout my journey, I have also obtained qualifications in coaching. I have a very, very strong passion around mindset. I have worked on my own mindset over the last sort of 14 years or so. And off the back of that, have obtained qualifications around neuro-linguistic programming, and have built some work in the mindset space, and believe that for successful change, we need to absolutely work on and develop the mindset. So I have an opportunity in my role to also work across 2 areas of the business. So I lead the capability development and change team, which is spread across 3 offices, Melbourne, Perth and Sydney. And I recently have been appointed as a project lead for what's called our GT Innovate business. In that business, we are working with clients to help them with huge change projects within their in-house legal teams. So we look at everything from people, process and technology. And I head up the division around capability development, particularly in the sort of team engagement, leading high-performing teams and leadership space. As part of my day-to-day, I get to work with the wonderful Christie, and I'm going to hand over to her to tell you, so she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Anu. As Anu said, I am fortunate enough to be part of her team. I have also been in the legal industry for a very long time, longer than Anu, and also started out in private practice. I was a construction lawyer for many years, particularly doing litigation, so very large-scale construction litigation, which I think is where my penchant for organising projects came. Large-scale litigation is, after all, a massive project. I then had the opportunity to move into a learning and development role at the firm I was working at. And so I've always worked for law firms, and I've always appreciated the opportunity to sort of shift my role depending on what was happening in the firm. And I think that's been one of the real benefits of working in the legal industry, that having that background can give you so much opportunity to do different things. My most recent role before coming to Gilbert and Tobin, I headed up the organisational development team at my old firm. And then when I came to Gilbert and Tobin, one of the reasons that I wanted to take on that role was to really spend some time working in an organisation where things were approached in a very different, innovative way, with a focus that was very much around what we can achieve in a rapidly changing legal industry. And I've really had the opportunity to do that. My core focuses really are around that concept of organisational development, but I have a real interest in the development of people and teams through capability. So what are the capabilities required? How do we map them? And then what development is required to do that? I also have a really strong interest in the concept of strengths. So using strengths tools, coaching from a strengths-based position, and really working with people from that position as well. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Anu to just give a little bit of an overview of our brief.
Thank you, Jan. So we just thought we would take you through some of the key things in this space, so leading and managing the new multidisciplinary workforce. So we're going to focus on a number of different strategies in this. So how to recruit, retain, retrain. They're all really important things, and they all need to be developed simultaneously. So we're going to focus a little bit on that. The ability to not just work remotely and flexibly, but how do you lead a team remotely and flexibly? How do you engage those people when they're working in different environments and working on a change project? How do you work together effectively as a blended workforce? How can you advance women in that environment as well? The capability identification will be a big part of that. So what are the career paths for people? What are the capabilities they need? How can they change and develop and evolve? And more importantly, I suppose, what are the skills for the future of work? And this is where the mindset piece comes in a bit. I'll hand over to Jan to talk a bit more about that in terms of how we can support you with the project. But the way in which we work and the skills that lawyers need for the future have rapidly changed. So we need to look at that, need to be able to identify what we currently need from a capability perspective, but what are we going to need in the future as well. So I might now just hand back to Jan.
So obviously the area that we're working in is an incredibly broad one. And when you're thinking about your project, you might have something very, very niche and specific in mind. And we're very happy to work with you on that and work out how to develop that. You may have something much broader in mind. There may be quite a large organisational change that you're looking at. So one of the things that we thought we would be able to help you with is really just the strategies around planning those projects. We do a lot of work in that space, creating that definition of what your project is. And then off the back of that, actually bringing more than just a ticker box approach to those things, but talking about the mindset that you need, about those core capabilities, what actually constitutes a good leader, how do you create safe teams. This whole concept of psychological safety is so important to the kind of work we're talking about. But ultimately what we really want to do is enjoy the opportunity to work with you as we see your projects come to fruition, and to celebrate with you when they reach their conclusion. So that's what Anu and I are really looking forward to. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name, as you can see on the screen, Nick Loates. I'm part of the KPMG Innovate team, where specifically my role is looking after collaboration. I've been designing collaborative experiences for more than the last 20 years, and have been lucky enough to do that around the world, addressing many different industries. So I bring experience from across many different sectors, many different organizations, and designing collaboration to get work done, to enable decisions to be taken across the whole of the project lifecycle. So whether that's very much in that strategy space, if it's in that transformation space, or it's in that change space, there are ways that we can help build that collaborative culture. My day job really is designing incredible collaboration experiences that help organizations use creativity and critical thinking to solve complex problems, take decisions, but importantly, while they're doing that, actually move that work forward by building ownership. There's we think it's a little bit of a misconception, but people often think to make a great decision, you put one or two people in a room, we will take that awesome decision that can move an organization or a project forwards. What you find is you spend the next 3 to 6 months trying to justify why that decision was made. So we very much believe in creating that collaborative mindset, that collaborative way of working that brings the right people into the right environment at the right time to help them to make those decisions. It's often the element of a project that people just leave to default, and we really believe that the future should be created by design. So how do you design for collaboration? So my brief, these may be some of your project area focuses, but don't be limited by these, is how do you break down the silos across departments, geographies? How can we level the playing field when we can't be all in the same room? So today, in the way that we're working in a remote environment, that's never been more important. And you can't just lift and shift what you've always done in that decision-making workshop context and put it online. You have to apply a level of design, you have to apply creativity to that collaboration to enable them to happen. So communications is a key part of that. So how do you improve that so that people have access to the right information at the right time? Turf wars is a lovely, lovely word. Often people have those great ideas and they will then spend their time defending those great ideas. Reality is we never know where good ideas are going to come from. So creating that engaging, that collaborative environment enables people to contribute to those. And doing all of that, what you're essentially doing is redefining networks and the way that you might interact with your clients much earlier on in a process, or your suppliers. So across the whole of the value chain, how do you have that conversation? So why is all that important? So collaboration, often it's one of those words that people use. It's thrown out there like innovation, but actually it really is a critical word. And why it's important is there's a blind spot. There's a HBR article that you can go away and read about, but the blind spot really talks about how do you work in a way that doesn't threaten or challenge people's identity? How do you bring legitimacy to your project and maintain it across that organization? How you don't challenge control, because the moment you do those things, you don't address those, people will retrench and they will start getting defensive and be less collaborative. And what you're really trying to do is play in the space of conversational intelligence. Often most conversations are just that, an information exchange. I'm going to tell you something, you're going to tell me something. We can push beneath that information exchange into that positional conversation, which is really where people start defending their ideas. And where we really want to get to is that point where we can go, here's your agenda, here's my agenda, this is our shared agenda, and that's true space of co-creation. To get there, you need a collaborative way of working. So future possibilities, so some of the other ideas that you might be thinking about is some of the new models that you might choose to adopt for collaboration, whether that's remotely, face-to-face, or a hybrid between the two. Accelerated decision-making, so having the right people in the right environment, the right information, you can remove all of those waits and delays in a project and accelerate the benefits or the new product development problem solving through untied teams, we often give problems to teams that just work together. So you're getting that same thinking, and you're often getting the same thinking that created the problem to try and fix the problem. And really just enable you to move into that true co-creation across the whole of your value chain. So love collaboration, addicted to collaboration. I bring a curious mindset. I'm a real believer in bringing new paradigms to challenge existing paradigms, and love to bring all of that think differently, work differently to your team and to your project. So that's enough about collaboration. So what I'm going to hand over to is John and David in redefining value.
Thank you, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. I suppose if we're talking about length of time in the legal profession, I'm going to take first prize for that, of the coaches, which I don't know necessarily is a good thing, but I've been around for a little while. As some of you may know, I'm a third generation recovering lawyer. I left mainstream law in 2005, and since then I've been a consultant mainly back to the legal profession around strategy and structure, but more particularly in latter years around the pricing of our services and our products. And as most of you know, I'm a long-time critic of, I guess, what I call the old law business model, which essentially leverages people by time by hourly rate. I just think there's a better way that we can practice our craft for the benefit, not just for our clients, certainly for our clients, but for ourselves and our team members. In 2017, I teamed up with David Wells, who I'll introduce in a minute, and Liz Harris, who some of you may know, and we formed the Innovum Group. And essentially, the Innovum Group is to assist firms in transforming both their pricing and business model to something that we think is better and different, which I'll talk about. But David, you may explain a bit about your background now.
Sure, thank you, John. John did get his practicing certificate well before I got mine, but I have maintained my practicing certificate, unlike John, and I've had mine for almost 36 years. Not sure whether I'm proud about that or embarrassed by it. Up until the 28th of February this year, I was the managing principal at a Melbourne legal practice called Moores. I'd been with Moores for 23 years, and I was the managing principal of that firm for the period from 2007 until I finished a couple of months ago. And when I became the managing principal in 2007, I thought that my primary responsibility was to get all of the lawyers on the team recording 5.5 chargeable hours of time per day. And I applied myself assiduously to that challenge, and I failed. Fortunately for me, I was introduced to the gentleman who's now my colleague at Innovum, John Chisholm, in 2010. And John put out a challenge to me and the other principals at Moores to consider what it might involve for Moores to become a firm of the future. And we took up that challenge, and one of the things that we dabbled with at Moores in the early days, this is in 2011, was pricing for value. And we got really serious about pricing for value in 2012. I'm ashamed to say that I hadn't, before meeting John, had any concept of what value actually was and why it was important for professionals in their dealings with their clients. But over the ensuing years, Moores got really good at understanding the value that it can create for client and the desirability of changing the pricing model to move away from hourly rates to pricing for value. And that pricing change catalysed a whole lot of other changes at Moores. It's now a completely different law firm to the firm that existed when I became the managing principal in 2007. And a lot of hard change has taken place, but very positive change. And as John said, with our co-director, Liz Harris, and with the blessing of Moores, the three of us formed this little pricing consultancy that works with all professionals, not just lawyers, principally encouraging them to consider changes to the pricing model, but whole of practice transformation in due course. Over to you, John.
Yeah, so I guess that leads quite nicely into, you know, how pricing can transform your firm and certainly your relationship with your clients, and both by anecdotal and experience and what we've seen that those firms that have changed their pricing model, as David was alluding to, has opened up a new world of, you know, finding creative solutions to your client. And I guess what we do is help firms change that nexus between time and value, which I think the time any of us spend on something may or may not bear any relationship to the value that's created for your client. So we help firms articulate, understand the value they're creating for their clients, and also to capture some of that value in strategic, more strategic pricing. And we think there's a whole lot of benefits, certainly in the relationships with the clients, but also the benefits internally with team members. Nick talked about collaboration, much more collaborative internal environment as well as an external environment. But you do have to have, or in our experience, if you are going to change your business model and pricing model, you may need to change your measurements and rewards. And I'll let David speak a little bit about perhaps some different measurements and rewards that we find useful in what we call firms of the future, timeless law firms, if you like.
Pricing is the most effective lever that can be pulled to improve profitability of a practice. But when we embark on any significant change, there are knock-on effects, and it would be naive to consider that if we just change a pricing model, it's not going to cause us to have to rethink the way we manage knowledge and the way we manage projects and the way we do business development, what clients we want to be acting for, and actually how we're going to manage our people as well. And so some of the old metrics that we might have had under our previous pricing model will be redundant, and we have to think about new metrics, new ways of working out what is going to indicate success of our practice and success for our people. And it's actually quite energizing when you start the process of redesigning your metrics and your compensation models too, so that they're much more holistic. It's a very, very exciting process to embark on, but it is a challenging and necessary process. So I think it's now over to Anthony and Amanda from LOD to talk about championing change.
Thanks, David, and hello, everyone. My name's Anthony Wright. I work as the Global Head of Innovation and Design for LOD. I've got a mixed background, accounting, corporate finance, and law. I also, for a time, worked in sales and marketing and as a general manager of strategy for a top 100 Australian business. My varied career actually made me realise a few things, and one of them is that I actually love being a lawyer, but not 5 days a week. And the other part that I think is relevant is that what I really enjoy doing is helping other lawyers improve, and inherently improving something requires a change, and that's what I'm most passionate about. I still work as a lawyer, corporate commercial lawyer, about 1 day a week, and the reason I do that is, well, there's 2 reasons. One is because I enjoy it, and the second reason is that I think it keeps me my hand in the game in terms of when we're working with other lawyers or legal teams or law firms, that, like, I get it. A contract's a contract, a dispute's a dispute, a client is a client, people are people. And I've worked with Amanda for probably about, over 5 years, but not quite 10. And we work together closely on a daily basis, which is something I really enjoy as well. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Anthony. And thank you, everyone. And we're really excited to work together with the CLI on this project. I'm the head of legal technology at LOD, and similar to others on this call, I am a private practice lawyer by background, and also worked in-house as a corporate counsel. And I'm going to mention that I've got 3 kids as well, because I think that's also an important part of everyone's role, and also just to apologise in advance for any little people that interrupt me. But, you know, mothering always adds that other dimension of everyone's lives, particularly in today's day and age. I'm really passionate about designing and implementing legal technology, but often when I'm asked to implement legal technology, it's not actually the technology that's relevant, it's everything that goes around it. It's the people, it's the processes, and then comes the systems. And any technology is only as good as the processes that you apply. So apologies for the French, but you know, you put shit into a system, you're going to get shit out of a system. It really is an end-to-end understanding of what are your organizational needs and requirements to make sure that the processes and the systems are user-centric, to make sure that they're user-focused and as efficient as possible. So for that, we use design thinking methodology, Lean Six Sigma methodology to ensure that we get high user adoption. One of those examples of some of the things that I do is, and you can see on the side there, using technology such as Microsoft. So I'm the product manager for LOD 365, which is where we design and configure solutions purely based on Microsoft to supercharge your existing Microsoft systems to enable matter management or contract management or whatever processes you want out of your software. I'll hand back to Anthony for how we can help you with the project.
As you can see here, these are some of the things that what we would coach and help you with as part of this aspect of the program. I think about change and championing change as leadership, or setting a vision for what needs to change, and most importantly, why. And something that Anu spoke about earlier on, about creating a mindset that something should or could change, and the personal impact of that. Coming up with ideas is actually very easy. What's actually very difficult is actions and accountability and getting things done, which often comes back to prioritization. Change often fails because people don't prioritize it and they get hung up on BAU, whereas change is absolutely important, and arguably more important than business as usual. And lastly, back to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Anthony. A lot of the change that we help teams with is based on this idea of improvement, and there is the whole basis of continuous improvement is that you don't need a big bang approach, and often it's the smaller incremental sub areas, and you'll get much more results from dealing with small change rather than trying to bite off more than you can chew. And the improvement can be technology, it can be non-tech. It can be at a personal level, at a team level, or at an organisational level. And it's really about understanding who the end users are. And because lawyers traditionally are not good at dealing with change, they underestimate the change management involved in a project. They're resistant to change because they feel often uncomfortable with vulnerability. They feel uncomfortable with uncertainty, and they feel uncomfortable when they don't know the answer to a question, let alone when they don't have the ability to know exactly what question should be asked. And driving change using these methodologies really encourages an agile approach to be adaptable and to allow for experimentation in the process, and to consider how you're going to engage all your stakeholders in a process, and to think about, okay, well, what is our current state here, and what are we trying to get to? How are we going to achieve that? How are we going to prove our ROI a return on investment for that. And if we need to pivot along the way, that is okay. And so we're really passionate about helping organisations, particularly in-house legal teams, with that journey, and really motivated to work with you and your project teams to achieve that purpose. I'll hand back to you, Terri.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you very much, everyone, for fabulous presentations, and hopefully that's given folks a little bit more of an opportunity to think about what projects they might submit and in what areas they might want to submit in. I'm just going to draw your attention again to that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and encourage you to submit any questions that you would like as I kind of wrap us up here. So I guess the thing to underscore here is that when you think about incubators, you often think about the development of legal tech, or you think about the development of the next app. This is not a legal tech incubator. This is about focusing on the 95% of the other things in firms and organisations that in many respects are necessary for that legal tech to be helpful, useful, and to be able to be taken forward for the benefits of clients, your organisation and your staff. So we want you to think about the projects again in those 4 key areas that we have mentioned. And I'm just going to address you or direct you again here to the key deadlines. Obviously, we've had this information session today. The next deadline coming up is that application form. And then a couple of deadlines to follow. The ones in red are the ones here on the screen that will require your action. The ones in different colours require us to do something as well. The question that's been raised here is your work confidential? And I can respond to that one. The work is, this is your project. So everything with respect to your project obviously is going to be your work completed by you for the benefit of your organisation and confidential to it. All of the folks here, you've heard their backgrounds and you know that they understand confidentiality. I will, however, underscore that you are expected in those coaching circles to be able to share information about your project to gain assistance from not just the coach, but others in that coaching circle. And also, obviously, to be able to learn from them in terms of the sharing of those experiences. I'm sure that there will be an agreement in each one of those coaching circles to understand information that is proprietary, because it's the only way that you can make sure that those coaching circles are candid and that you share sufficient information to make sure that it works. I've got a question here. What happens if you're developing legal tech software? Can you still apply? Yeah, by all means, do apply. But our focus here is in those key areas, first and foremost, that you've seen noted a couple of times in this presentation. I would see legal tech as a potential deliverable, but the focus really being on supporting you in those key areas. So a few more questions coming in, folks, bear with me. Would there be any appetite to look at a project which aims to elevate the profile of the entire legal profession? Yep, absolutely. Are you able to give some examples of projects encouraged to be submitted? I think at this stage, what we'd really like to see you do is to focus on your projects and for the innovation and the if you like, the suggestion of that project to come from you. If you do need a little bit more guidance, by all means, email us and we can refer that to the coaches in your particular area and see if we can give you a bit more support there or encouragement to come forth with your suggestions. So I'm just going to do another quick Q&A check at the moment to make sure that we've answered everything that we should, and it looks like so far we have. So let me just again bring this contact information to your attention. Please email us with anything that occurs to you after this. We understand it's a lot of information. We will make sure that this recording is available for you online in the next 48 hours. So you can come back to it, listen to it again as many times as you need to. to help you think about your projects. As I said, email communication, please use that email address that's noted there. There's a phone number there as well, and where you can go back to, particularly to look at those FAQs, you'll find those on our website. So I'm just going to do one more quick check to make sure that everything's done. Yep, I think we have answered all the questions to date. So if I may, on your behalf, before ending, just thank all of the coaches that are online again for your time for this and going forward for the time that you'll be giving to these projects. I just want to, if I may, close by stating the obvious. We believe that this is the first time that there has been something like this launched in Australia nationally and in New Zealand. We also see the opportunity to bring the two countries together through these coaching circles to share an experience that is not just local or not just national, but actually international. And bearing in mind an understanding of the close relationship between Australia and New Zealand, that you may well have colleagues in those two countries as well through your organisation. This is a unique opportunity. Opportunities like this don't come along very often, and they certainly don't come along very often for free. If you've been looking for an opportunity to, if you like, entrench some of the innovation that you perhaps have been forced to do in your organisations, or were on that track anyway, this is a real opportunity to bring about some sort of sustaining, if you like, implementation of those projects over time, with the support of the coaches that really will require a sort of accountability and a responsibility that helps those projects move along, that you really only get very often with the opportunity to interact with an external coach and with somebody and with your group in your coaching circle that you may not otherwise find within your organisation. So I would say to you, really take advantage of this opportunity. The question, sorry, very last question that I've got here is, will the application be on the CLI website? The application is through an online form which is hosted by SurveyMonkey. So again, just to emphasise that that's available to you, and we are only taking online applications. So with that, folks, and a wave to the coaches, I think I've covered everything. Wave back to me if you think we're good to go. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much again. Thank you for being on the session, and we look forward very much to receiving your applications. Thanks, folks. Bye for now.